let's get into a topic that we've talked about before, but I think that at this point, it's something that we really do need to address as time continues to wind down. As we also just saw this specific player hit a monstrous home run for like the fourth time in the last 5 days. So, with the deadline sell off in the rearview mirror, the Mets are obviously looking long term. So, they have some key players that are locked down, such as Francisco Lindor, Brandon Nimmo, Kodai Senga, Edwin Diaz. The most pivotal piece to the Mets core is still unknown. While set to become a free agent after the 2024 season, Pete Alonso's future continues to get more complicated as time goes on. The two parties have seemed to be committed to make Alonso a Met for life, but the movement has been very stagnant ever since that has been said. Mets GM Billy Epler, after saying that he plans to speak with Alonso and his agent about the Mets' future, said this: "We love having Pete here. He's such a strong player for this organization, and he means so much to the community and our identity. But what comes beyond in 2024, that'll be a discussion that we kind of want to hold behind closed doors." After the trade deadline, Alonso said, "Whatever their vision is, whatever their plan is, it really does not necessarily matter to me because I'm here right now, and I want to be the best player that I can be as long as I'm here. It could be forever. I just don't necessarily know what the future holds. As long as I'm here, you're going to get the best from me every single day. You're going to get the best effort to win baseball games." Since his 2019 rookie campaign, Alonso has already made a massive mark on the Mets franchise, already sitting 5th on the Mets all-time home runs list, 10th on the Mets all-time RBIs list, 3rd in qualified slugging, 4th in OPS, and 11th in wins above replacement.
To me, I've been saying for years now, and I'm not going to sway from it, Pete Alonso needs to be extended. I mean, there's no question about it. Right before this podcast started, Carson and I were talking about, Pete Alonso's a real good chance to hit 50 home runs this year. And that's coming off a year where, you had that injury in the middle of it, came back early, was not the same player. So you feel like without that injury, he has a good chance of maybe even 60. I mean, and that's the kind of thing. And this is not the first time that we've seen Pete Alonso in, the upper echelon as far as hitting a lot of home runs. So this isn't a 1 year thing. This is year after year after year of Pete Alonso being a tremendous power hitter. And you listen to those numbers, he's become very quickly one of the greatest hitters in New York Mets history. And you know what? And it's coming from an organization that is known for its pitching. So it's not like we've had, this great group of hitters to select from. But I just still, to me, stuff like that is irreplaceable. It's invaluable. You can't put a number to it. You can't just say like, oh, you know what? There's that sentimental value that goes along with it, because it's not so much that, oh, you can get another 40 home run power hitter or 50 home run power hitter. It's not as simple as that, because as we've said many a times, it's not just a thing where you come to New York and you play well. I mean, there are certain guys that can handle it, certain guys that can't handle it. Are you really going to have the right character for it? Because fans could turn on you in a hurry. And I remember clear as day, Carlos Delgado. I mean, here's a guy who was a first baseman for the Mets. He had a ton of home runs, but then all of a sudden started struggle, got into it with the fans, and then they want Delgado out of town. You would never have that kind of issue with Pete Alonso. So there's just a lot of different things that go on when it comes to playing in New York, and Pete Alonso checks all those boxes. He may do some silly things. We'll get to that as our next topic, but I think all in all, he's a guy that is just so valuable to this team, and we've talked about it so much, especially with this current iteration of this team where they lack power, and Pete Alonso is your one true guy who always gives you power, and you take him out of this lineup, it's not the same team. I mean, the Yankees had to do the same thing with Aaron Judge, where they knew like they are nowhere near the same team without him, so they had to pay him a ridiculous amount of money to keep the guy. The Mets need to do the same thing with Alonso. I mean, I feel like that is the kind of importance that he serves to this team, and they should express that by paying the guy. I mean, who's kidding who here? If you're willing to if you're willing to put out the money for these super old starting pitchers, you can make it happen for Alonso as well. That's the way I view it, especially as the years go on, and we're going to get some of these expiring contracts coming off the books. Some of these veterans, obviously Escobar gone, Canna gone, all these veterans that are gone. hopefully with all these draft picks that the Mets have made, they can have these young pieces take over and be on the team at low salaries, and that will allow you to allocate that money towards Pete Alonso. I mean, I'm hoping that's the route they take because that's the way I would do it, and I feel like that's what makes the most sense for this team because you've seen just year after year what this guy is at. He's not a guy, good year, bad year, like we see with some other players. With Pete Alonso, every year he's going to hit you a bunch of home runs. He's going to be out there every single day. Even if you hit him, he's still coming back out there quicker than he should. Like, I mean, what else could the guy do? Could he be better in the field? Sure. Could he be better running the bases and not looking like he's about to fall on his face? Sure. But I think that he just does so much else well that he's a guy you got to keep around for a long time.
I don't really think at this point it comes with any sentimentalness like of, this is our homegrown guy. We got to keep him. You have to keep this guy because there is no team without him. And at this point, you have to acknowledge that with what the Mets have coming up in the future and what could possibly help us out, this is what you have established as your power bat who can prolifically produce every single year. And he's not old. He's not young either. He's going to be a 30-year-old free agent, but that's going to be the prime of his career. Now, the thing about Pete Alonso is that we don't see any sign of this guy slowing down as in terms of power hitter. And we've seen him just sustain as this prolific bat every single year for now 5 years now. This is his 5th year, technically 4 years if you don't want to count the pandemic year. At this point, you don't really have any other option, in my opinion. I just don't see, if you do let Pete Alonso walk, if you do trade him, who are you replacing him with? Not even just for power as first base. Like if I were to look into the Mets' internal options for first base, right? Let me do that for a second. And I posted a tweet about this. You got Joe Suzy. He's got an 100.8 max exit velo right now as a 6'2" first baseman, and he's hit 14 home runs in about 700 plate appearances. JT Schwartz, 4th round pick from a few years ago. He's a 6'4" first baseman with 8 home runs in over 700 plate appearances. Ryan Clifford could be a possibility, right? But he's not going to be here until about 2026. What are you going to replace him with? I would love to know. You know what I mean? Like, what do you have out there that is going to replace him? There's no Freddie Freeman available. There's no Matt Olson available. So at this point, all you really need to do to solidify this core is convince Alonso for the long term. I hope that this offseason it gets done. As he continues to hit home runs, as he continues to dominate as the ridiculous power hitter that he is, it will continue to get even harder and harder to extend him. And all I can say is that the Mets better be on their heels next year if he's not extended, because a contract year for Pete Alonso is something I'm extremely scared about. I don't want to walk the tightrope like the Yankees did with Judge. I don't want to do that. The Yankees almost lost him to the Giants. The Giants got Arson Judge. Who knows? We've seen that happen to us before. Again, I would love to extend him right now. I just don't see where your plan B is, especially when you have other players here long term that you see as the core of your team.
I think that's the other problem too, is that they do run the risk of letting Pete Alonso continue to have good year after good year, and that value just keeps increasing and increasing. That's why, again, I mean, my thing is when the Braves made their extensions for Albies and Acuna, I thought that's when the Mets should have extended Alonso. It was different ownership at the time, but I thought that should have been, and once Steve Cohen took over, that excuse was out the window. I mean, you still had a couple years where you could have made it happen right there. You could have gone for way less than if you let this thing go to free agency, and he has a even better year next year. You're spending way more than you should have had you just done it years ago. So that is the other risk that they are running by. If they do intend on keeping him, why not just do it now before he does have a crazy contract year, and then you got to pay even more? And the good point that you brought up is that you don't see this guy slowing down. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the fact that he's naturally strong. I mean, I see Pete Alonso as a guy who To me, I think he could age pretty well, in all honesty. I think based off his skill set and the way he plays, I think he's a guy that he's just going to hit home runs for a really long time. I mean, I look at a guy like maybe a Nelson Cruz, for example, who just in the league a long time hitting home runs. I could see that happening with Pete Alonso, where down the road he becomes a DH or whatever, and the guy is still just hitting a bunch of homers. So to me, it's not like a guy like Stanton who had so many injuries that he just broke down and there's just nothing left in his body. For Alonso, the guy he's never hurt. The only time he is hurt is when someone hits him with a pitch. It's not like a hamstring goes out or a knee goes out or a hip goes out, all this other stuff they see players go through.
Mm.
So for me, I think he's a guy that is worth your investment because year after year, he just continues to put up numbers. And I feel like you said, there were just no signs of him slowing down. So, I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't want to keep him long term.
Going into their late 30s, somebody who just continues to produce like prolifically. I mean, every time when I think of Pete Alonso, I instantly think of Harmon Killebrew as a
Yeah.
player. Like I instantly think of him. If that is somebody that you could model a career after that, I mean that's a guy that's consistently 35 to 40 home runs a year, right? And this is someone who goes for some distance with his home runs. We know this, right? And he's a ridiculous line drive hitter. He can cover the zone at any point. So it's like I don't see any other game changer coming in here and just replacing that production from Pete Alonso. Now, I understand we have Francisco Alvarez. Francisco Alvarez is great, but he's 21. We haven't seen this for a while yet, right? Do I think he's going to do it for a long time? Absolutely. I don't understand the need for just having one power hitter. Again, that's a different story. Let's just not forget, this guy barely sees pitches in the zone. You gave him no protection throughout his entire career, and he's putting up numbers like that.
You have Daniel Vogelback batting after him. So, I mean, why would you pitch to him?
My impression of it is a home run equals 4 singles. It's 4 hits right there. You create runs by a trip around the bases. And as many bases as you can get, that's offense right there, especially in this game. They need to get this thing done. I think it's already been established that they need to. We already know that the Mets do see him as a priority, but we'll see how deep they get into conversations this offseason because it could get ugly if it's not gotten done in the offseason.
To me, why don't you save yourself the headache? Because if it doesn't get done this offseason, all year long, I mean, that's going to be the story in the media. They're going to ask you about it all the time. They're going to ask Pete Alonso about it all the time. So why not just get it settled and then no one has anything to talk about? How about that? You know what I mean? Because what are we going to, I mean, we've been talking about it all year this year. We're going to talk about it all year next year. Just get it over with. I mean, save all yourselves the headaches and all the other extra stuff that comes with it.